When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The 18 that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night. Download a Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to Raw. Rewind to Raw on Netflix.
Is that what? Is that the official title of Raw now? Raw on Netflix.
No, it's actually pronounced as Michael Cole. Netflix.
Okay. I'm gonna have to get used to that one.
Yes.
All right.
Welcome one, welcome all. Sit back, crack open your real American beer. It's time to celebrate January 6th.
Boy, did they. LA.
Boy, did they ever.
LA was
Yes.
celebrating. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? It was LA came out. They came out for January the 6th.
Yeah.
And there you have it, you know, on the day when a president was being confirmed. They were unconfirming another real American. But we will get into all of that tonight. We have a lot to get to with Raw. We will also get to some news items, but we're going to push news toward the end of the show, along with feedback. Off the top, though, we know you've got a captive audience, so we're starting it off with Dwayne Johnson. He's going to come out and he's going to explain the changes here coming to post-wrestling. He is our rock. He is Wai Ting.
Well, I hope I don't get booed out of the building, like, another man trying to, sell his product here. But I do want to let people know that those of you that are watching us live, we're not going to be live starting on Wednesday because we are slightly changing our format where we are going to be live exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. And I want to thank a lot of you guys who have decided to sign up to support us. It's our Patreon. It's how we keep this going. And the reason we are doing it is because we are going to do these full format shows, including our news of the day, including our question period, now in the Post Wrestling Cafe. Part of the thinking is that we want to make these shows a little bit quicker, and therefore for our non-patron, basically our casual and new viewers. So we want to make them just the reviews themselves. So you guys will still get them for free, but you will get them after we have done recording. They'll be uploaded to YouTube and they'll be ready for you guys in the morning, where most of you will be listening to these. So that stays the same. In fact, you guys will be even getting a little bit more because we're going to now be putting our SmackDown reviews on Friday nights / Saturday mornings in the free feed as well. But just the reviews themselves, if you want the full thing, including our discussions about the news topics of the day and also our feedback and question period, just consider signing up at the Post Wrestling Cafe.
Yes, you can give it a sample. It's $6. That gives you 30 days to kind of check out what we do on the Post Wrestling Cafe. You'll get what we're calling now the XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown that contain all the segments Wai mentioned. Plus, your $6 gets you Rewind Aways, usually 2 per month. This month, in addition to that, we've got our recent Tokyo Dome coverage. We're going to be doing shows after TNA Genesis and the People versus GCW. MCU Later is on there. So it's a really great value for your $6. And one of the big things that Wai and I discussed amid all these changes was our desire to keep prices flat and not undergo any price increases. So we understand there's always a transitional period, but so far, it seems that it's been met well, and we hope many of you join us on the cafe. That's where we will be live Wednesday, immediately following Dynamite. So, postwrestlingcafe.com.
And a lot of people taking advantage of our January promotion. We're actually giving people a free month for signing up for a year in advance. So you can do a thing now where you can sign up for an annual membership and subscribe. Just pay your fee, at one time, and you get a free month on top of that. And that's only for the month of January. But thank you for a lot of you guys who have decided to take advantage of it.
All right. So that deal runs until the end of the month, and we are going to be going right into our review of Raw tonight, as that is the top of everyone's mind, and we're coming off just minutes after the show, which ended up being just slightly past 11 Eastern that this ended. Be honest, Wai, what time did you expect us to be going live on Monday night? Because when I was getting ready for match number 2 in the second hour around 9:30, I thought we would be around like past midnight. I thought this was going to be the longest Raw in history.
I thought at the very least 11:45 is when you and I would probably go live on YouTube. this was a very standard length edition of Raw. In fact, I just went back on Netflix to watch the archive, and the length was recorded at about 3 hours and 3 minutes. So barely even an overrun.
In terms of time, yes, but there was, like, for us being international viewers, there was pretty much no interruption. Like, it was like the odd video package. So in terms of actual programming time, it was a lot more than a 3-hour Raw, but it still had the roughly same end time as the 3-hour
I suppose
era.
define programming, because a lot of it was like very skippable stuff, you know?
Some of it was, but I think it's you and I don't have the luxury of just skipping past segments. So I mean, it's
Yeah, we will talk about it. Of course, John and I being Canadian, we got the international feed, but I do understand actually a lot of Americans who subscribe. But like this was interesting because like I was even taking a survey throughout the show to see like what American viewers were seeing, and a lot of American viewers, even though they were subscribed on like a ad-free Netflix tier, were still getting ads, while some people were not. So I'm wondering if it's like location dependent specifically for where somebody might be. But some of you may have enjoyed a sort of ad-free experience just like us, but we will certainly give our perspective of everything we saw during the commercials.
Yeah, one of the many interviews that was done today. I mean, there was quite the last-minute full-court press. A WWE VP Brian Fathom spoke with Sports Business Journal, and he indicated, while you might go to commercials if you're in Texas, if you're in Italy, you're going to see us continue content. You're going to see the continuation of a match. You're going to see exclusive interviews with our talent. You might see an exclusive package that will only be viewed on that international level. So explaining that international viewers are not going to have commercials and that we are just going to get the extension of matches and other things placed in there. But it seemed like tonight there were some in the U.S. I don't know if that's just something that they are, if that will evolve or change, and what that what those changes are like. I'll say just first of all, I don't think too many people were concerned about the technical side of things, and I'd be curious to hear people's feedback. Seamless experience that I had tonight. Like, not one single issue that I encountered.
Same with me. Yeah, very clear, crystal clear stream. And at this point, I didn't think it was much of a concern, especially since the football game seemed to go off without a hitch.
Yeah, I mean, outside, I saw like there were some complaints at the beginning of one of the NFL games. There was like a studio segment where the audio was out, but like very minor in the grand scheme of things. And it seemed that I would imagine that, I mean, I'm sure this was a gigantic audience, but I don't think anywhere in the league of the NFL or like Tyson Paul as well.
Beyonce, yeah.
Yes, Beyonce, the big draw that they did not have here. But you know what? In Beyonce's place, man, they got some drones way, and I think Jeremy Borash was going wild tonight, maybe, because we had a lot of drone shots. As you being the production aficionado, was it? How did you feel about the overall production of this show? Because it was one that I think a lot of people can appreciate, but it was a lot. It was a lot of, look what we can do. And this was a showcase for them in terms of like the ramp up of what they have been slowly introducing on the shows over the last year.
Yeah, we even got a drone light show on the outside of the building, John. I don't know if you know.
They used to do this in Smoky Mountain all the time.
Sure, that's right. That was one of the big curiosities of this particular show. I wanted to see what new production we were going to get. We had anticipated, a brand new look, obviously, a new logo, new graphics, and all those things look great every time. Like, I mean, the production is just outstanding, But some of the other things I did note was, we have a new set, no giant Tron, at least for tonight. This was more of a stripped down, similar to like what the PLEs that we've been seeing.
Yeah, I don't know if this will be the setup for this was to fit 17,000 people, and they just shut down the set. I would imagine like there will be weeks where it will, probably a lot of times where we'll get the standard set.
The mat is exactly the one that we saw leaked, which, is black and incorporated a lot of corporate logos. Some new gym and drone shots. Some we've seen them use previously, occasionally. The refs have black shirts now. Otherwise, it didn't feel all that different from a typical Raw, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this This arena is incredible, the Intuit Dome. I mean, this is still a very new arena. This is where the UFC is going to be running later this month. And, I mean, it's weird. This had, like, the feel of a stadium at times, even though it was an arena. They also have all the seats light up red. And
that's one of the features of the Intuit Dome. They have LEDs programmable in the armrests. And one of the big features is this thing they have called the wall, which is like, you know, maybe what you're describing as more of like sort of like a, I don't know, Roman Colosseum type of feel that with a far steeper side. And they made great use of that in the opening. Yeah.
So it's incredibly, it's an amazing arena.
Great first arena to do a debut. Yeah.
So we have Michael Cole and Pat McAfee on the call as Pat McAfee is back. WrestleTic's last number was 17,003, with Michael Cole noting it was over 17,000, so this looked to be around the full number. Interestingly enough, 80% of that were celebrities.
Pretty much, yeah.
How many comps were? I wonder if any of these celebrities had to pay for tickets. Like, a lot of Netflix integration. If you have a special coming up on Netflix, you were going to get some shine on this show.
Well, I'm willing to bet most of them actually shared the same seat. I think they were probably doing the thing where they're just cycling them in and out.
How many times do we get both Culkin brothers? And I don't think they even seated them together.
Very true. Interesting.
Yeah. So, anyway, we open the show and we're on this drone going through the concourse, the red carpet arrivals, and into the cold open that they leaked earlier today. Quite a spectacular video that they put together here. Kind of an evolution of that Kid Rock video they did that decade ago, where it was like the history of the WWF, but this a more modern version as some poor artist was tasked with creating a canvas that I'm sure WWE will find a way to sell and market in every form possible. And we had this giant curtain around the ring, and then the video is playing on this like screen for the audience, and then the curtain comes down, and there was Jesus Christ himself risen on January the 6th, Paul Levesque, to kick off the Netflix era. And what says new era than Fortnite, Riyadh season, Real American Beer, Snickers, Cricket Wireless, and Netflix logos that are now emblazoned on this mat?
No, that's exactly what I would suggest is a big thing. Yeah, just on the video, it was excellent, really, really well produced. I found it interesting how they chose to be very upfront about the scripted nature of professional wrestling. You know, in fact, I believe, like, was it Paul Levesque actually typing on that typewriter?
Oh, I didn't know if it was actually Paul Levesque on the typewriter.
Okay, well, anyway, there's somebody typing on a typewriter to fully acknowledge that, hey, what you're about to see is written and scripted. Now, it wasn't like so blatant that I think like it would defeat the immersion of a child, for instance. But I mean,
what is a work? What is a shoot?
Yeah, heels, baby faces, certainly a different era from what we're used to.
And more than anything, obviously Netflix, they have whenever they have been talked about getting into live sports, like obviously it's more and more, but with WWE, they emphasize so strong. It's like, we want to be involved in sports with storytelling, and the storytelling is the buzzword for this relationship. And it was really hammered home in this video. Like, this is what we do. There is no wool being pulled over anyone's eyes. It's not 1983. I'm sure some people will have issues with such sacred words being utilized on a pro wrestling program, but they're bringing I thought it was a great video.
Yeah, I sense like when you're trying to sell the idea of professional wrestling to a casual, non-professional wrestling watching audience, I think I know this because when I describe what I do for a living, I'm still met with like a lot of people saying like, oh yeah, like, I mean, that stuff is not real, right? Like, I still get met with that.
Yeah, I would say, reaction. Yeah, no, it's legit.
That's what I would usually say. But like, there's still a need to tell the people that the people who are fans of wrestling who are fans of wrestling know that it's not scripted, and that's exactly why we enjoy it. We like it because it is a scripted thing, not dissimilar to people who watch Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, which I don't love, apparently, but that's a controversial statement. But yeah, like I found that this to be an interesting sort of like first introduction, at least.
Well, after Paul welcomed us to the Netflix era, it was like a sea of pyro that went off around him. I thought this guy was like done. This pyro went all around him. I was like, oh my God, get this guy out of the ring. And then
I bet you his ears were probably not.
Dude,
not
like
very
if you've ever been next to like some of those some of that pyro, like the sound of it is like shotgun blasts and yeah, this was just like a fucking sea of pyro that just went off to all angles of this guy. Thankfully, they had their marks on, and Paul left unscathed. But the lights go out, and here to kick things off, it's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Pat McAfee squealed when The Rock's music played. And out he comes with the People's Championship, and what better way to usher us into this new era than high-fiving and hugging Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro in the front row as he was watching this real-life activation of the Dwayne Johnson IP in real time inside of this brand new Netflix era.
Is this the official WWE debuts of Mark Shapiro and Ari?
Oh, I was so hoping Mark Shapiro would get interviewed or get to do something on this show. Unfortunately, we just got to see the man. So this was a puzzling usage of Dwayne Johnson tonight, and we're going to get into all of this. So he gets in, and this is not the final boss. Did not appear on Netflix. This was Dwayne Johnson going over, handing his People's Championship to his two daughters, which in hindsight kind of feels like that was our retirement of this People's Championship, because I don't know what the purpose of it is anymore. They were with his with Dwayne's mother, Ada, who was there, and he talked about his father, and then a tried and true favorite on this show, mentioning that this is the largest arena gate in WWE history.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in debt. They all cheered that they were all gouged for this 17,000 plus, and this would have topped, I believe the last record was that Backlash show in France last year, which was around $3.3 million. So that is what they topped for this Arena Gate. And so like incredible figures. And 17,000, put that into perspective, they ended up outdrawing Wrestle Dynasty at the Tokyo Dome, numbers wise.
I guess not that crazy. You're talking about both nights combined.
No, one night. Night two, they beat them. They drew 16,000 at the Tokyo Dome.
You're talking about numbers. I thought you were talking about the gate.
No. Oh, the gate, they destroyed those. But just actual people in the building, they outdrew the second night of the Tokyo Dome, not the first one. So he then shouts out Ted Sarandos and Bella Bajaria, her of Bad Man Gone fame, and they're off in their private box. Everyone's been given championship belts, replicas, and then talks about the man who he has bled all across the country with, is willing to do it again. Thought he was talking about Hunter, but no, it's Cody Rhodes. And he puts over Cody, who's just sitting in the crowd. And then he talks about his cousin, Roman Reigns, the original tribal chief. He's going to be watching tribal combat. It's time to get the show on the road. And he goes over, and not since Vince McMahon hugging Eric Bischoff was I so puzzled as he hugs Cody. And it felt like the end of this. It felt like they are not going in this direction at all. Like by the end of tonight, it really felt like A, Rock is not doing a match at Mania, and B, like these programs that were there you could go to at some point felt like they were just kind of put to the side. Like especially the Cody one, which was the big one that they shot the night after, coming out of Mania.
Yeah. As you mentioned, John, this felt like a very almost out of character Dwayne Johnson appearance that was totally separate from the last time we saw him. Even at what was it?
This was member of the board of directors, Dwayne Johnson.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And came out here and delivered, I would say, like a very real world address. But I think this to me felt like a very deliberate way of killing expectations for Rock versus Cody, or even Rock versus Roman. Not to say they can't go to it at some point later on, but for this particular cycle, I think this was a deliberate way to tell the audience not to expect these things so that we could tell the actual stories we are going to tell. Otherwise, there was no need to deliberately show Cody, have Cody come out ringside to have this embrace between the two. So disappointing in many ways, if we are to read that into this. Disappointing because it leaves a lot of unresolved, I suppose, story. And I really do just want to know what the gift was that The Rock gave Cody.
I don't know. I thought this was even if you wanted to bring him out in this fashion, you didn't have to do this deal with Cody. You could just leave that lingering, and when he can do a match, we keep that option open. I just feel like you've extinguished what you had here.
Well, by the same coin, they could just rebuild that back up, right? At any point that they want to. I mean, if this is the intent, that to kill speculation about Rock versus Cody for this season, I could imagine them wanting to do it because they didn't want Cody and Cena, for instance, to feel like a disappointment in its place to audiences.
Do you think they would feel disappointed if that's the direction?
I don't. Yeah. Maybe they have some concern though, or who exactly knows right now.
The first match is Solo Sikoa against Roman Reigns. Tribal Combat Rules. And Reigns is out with Paul Heyman and confirmation here, Alicia Taylor, the new announcer on Raw, with Lillian Garcia flipping to SmackDown. And Heyman is handed the Ulafala, and we then just continue here. And we get into the match, and we have a spinning Solo onto the desk, as Pat McAfee is remarking and ogling over Roman Reigns' Nike boots, which he says may be the nicest boots he has ever seen, period. Sikoa uses the steps on Reigns, and then Sikoa gets in control. He's using chairs, and we also got Solo Sikoa, actor, conveying his love for Roman Reigns. I loved you. I always loved you. And he puts the chair around Roman's neck and goes for the hip attack, but Roman gets out of the way. Then there's a spinning Solo on the chairs. Sikoa brings out a table, and this is amazing. They had the shot on Solo as he's bringing this table out. And somehow this man did not see Roman leave the ring, run around the ring, and catches him blindsided with a drive-by. It's like, how did he not see this? He's looking straight into the ring.
There are a lot of distractions in this building.
Maybe
John.
all those LED lights were blinding.
Celebrities ringside, you never know.
Maybe he saw Topanga. Sikoa starts using a kendo stick. I love you, but you never loved me. Which, I mean, Wai Ting has said many times. Powerbomb Sikoa out of the corner, puts him through the table, but then Tama Tonga yanks Chad Patton to the floor. He's appeared out of nowhere. Jacob Fatu follows, and they're all beating down on Reigns. And then he is hit with the double springboard moonsault, a Samoan spike, but Roman kicks out. And they've done a very good job of Solo just plowing through people the last month. And the Samoan spike, very protected, so the kick out got a big reaction. I will say, Wai, and I'm curious if you thought differently. I thought everyone was awaiting the run-ins that they were going to happen. Mm-hmm. This match was just going at a snail's pace for me until we got to the run-ins. Like, everything was it was so slow and so deliberate.
I'll say I kind of expected that pace, John, because I've seen enough Roman and Solo matches at this point. Like, Roman has this style, like it's this style, and it works for him because of the star power. Solo, I think, has tried to replicate the style to far less success because he doesn't have the star power of Roman. But when you put the two together, this was exactly what I expected.
Like, Roman is going to, like, you have to have the performer that is going to pull that out of Roman, and you're dead on with Solo being a very similar version here. So Sammy and Jay come out to Sammy's music. So we got big pop for this, and they battle Tom and Fatu. We get a spear from Roman, but there's no referee. So another ref runs down. Solo kicks out. Crowd is pretty into it at this point. Then Kevin Owens appears, stunning Reigns, and then Sikoa is on top for a 2 count. And as Owens teases a package pile driver to Roman, Cody runs out, fighting Kevin Owens. So they managed to promote the Royal Rumble, and I thought they did a very good job of it was very clear they wanted to get as many faces on the show as possible, and going to the old NXT well of having wrestlers in the crowd, the celebrities, for that big time feel. And just rather, whether it was interviews with Kathy Kelly or a run in here, it was establishing who these are, why they're feuding, for Cody and Owens hitting, they're facing each other in a ladder match next month at the Rumble. Really trying to get you on board with these are the stories that are in motion and this is what's coming up. So there's a Cody Cutter.
Taking advantage of the increased exposure and really treating this like, again, an introductory first issue type of episode.
Right. But not at the same time where if you are a regular viewer, you felt like they were just, spoon feeding you. Like it was done very well. Like Michael Cole did a very effective job in that regard. Cody Cutter takes out Owens. They fight into the crowd, and Roman is left with Sikoa, ducks the spike, and hits a pair of spears. And this was a night of double maneuvers to keep the opponent down, and Roman wins the much prized Ulafala in 21 minutes and 30 seconds. And Heyman goes to present the Ulafala, but instead The Rock returns. And you think this may be the big angle. And he takes the Ulafala. He places it over Roman's neck. He stares at him. He takes the glasses off. And then the Outrunners, you son of a bitch. And they had the big Arnold Carl Weathers moment with their arms locked in unison. And a Rock just went to the side. He watched, they embraced, and that was it. And at least there were certainly, they left this one more open-ended. But if you were looking for like some big angle or hint towards something, you can maybe look at something down the road with these two. But I would say The Rock, this felt to me as though he is probably not figured into plans for Mania. That was my takeaway after 3 hours of this.
And if that's how I read it too, John, and if that was the intended message, I thought that they did a good job of delivering it. Like, listen, we were inferring all of that just simply by what? Dwayne looking and pausing, for this amount of time while at the same time hugging. So like I think you suggested, they've established that there is some teasing there. There is some tension to be had there, but we're just not going to get it yet. Not in the near future. So, the match itself, in-ring physically, this was, I felt, a very pedestrian, like simple pro wrestling match. Watching it without sound, I think this would have been very boring. But listening to it, you would think that there was a stadium here crammed inside this, hockey arena. They were hanging on to every sway and momentum, every run-in. And when the crowd is that responsive, I feel like we can only look at the match in admiration. Coming off of Wrestle Kingdom and some of the matches we saw there to this was certainly jarring.
I don't want to hear any slander against Zack Sabre Jr. and Shota Umino. If you're the amount of cinema comments I saw after this match, I was like, okay, let's temper it down a little bit.
But that's not what this audience was there for. They weren't there for the 5-star, 7-star, 6-star matches. They were there for celebrity and star power, and this match certainly gave you that.
Jackie Redmond, I really like I hope they get away from more of the backstage interviews and utilize out in the arena like they did with Jackie Redmond, where they did many of these interviews with the crowd in the background.
So these were all during commercial.
Oh, so we were the only, these are the exclusive interviews they were talking about. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, this one was interesting because this definitely had impact on the show because we have the New Day out and Xavier Woods is already hitting the booze. So we got the sense, this match is not happening tonight. And they explained they were supposed to have a match, but they told Triple H they don't want to be here because LA doesn't deserve to see them wrestle. They have a bad taste in their mouth and said how LA elevated this trash rapper Kendrick Lamar. We all know Drake won the beef, right? And it was very well done here because we cut from this right to a Penta vignette. Although it does not feel like, it's not as though they postponed this match by a week. This one feels more like they just had a change in direction because it seems that what we are going to get is Penta debuting next week and not in this New Day segment teaming with Ray.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this was a timing issue. I think this might have been more just a change of direction.
Could have been. Now, didn't they also announce Logan Paul for the show?
He was there. He was just shown in the crowd really briefly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was there.
And we saw the video package, but we didn't really see any like actual segment from Logan Paul.
No, they just showed him like other wrestlers in the crowd, and like that was the extent of it.
Yeah. I suppose, yeah, we don't exactly know what the original plans were for Penta. We assumed that he was supposed to team with Rey Mysterio, but they seem to be going in a different direction now. And I don't really dislike it. I think, like, you know, I kind of want to see him out of the LWO verse, you know, like with all of that. I'd like to see him maybe establish
He'll be an American Alpha.
I guess so.
Or Alpha Academy.
Does this seem to indicate that this is what they're going to call him? Just straight up Penta?
Yeah, I think so.
I would assume so too. It's easy. Like if they own the copyright to it, then yeah, why wouldn't they? So I'd love to see New Day cut that same promo in Toronto, and knowing, you know, in Toronto they'd probably reverse it. I'd love to see Toronto's reaction.
I feel Toronto would be more like they'd agree. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
Is Toronto, like, I don't know if they were really, like, loyal to Drake in that whole thing. Or like, understood.
Yeah, well, Kendrick's playing 2 shows here.
Kendrick's doing the Super Bowl halftime show?
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah. It's a big deal. Yeah.
There was a Royal Rumble Riyadh spot with, at the end of this, the most noteworthy thing here at the end was just the slate at the end of the official platinum partners, the premium partners, and then a list of the strategic partners attached to this. There's like 85 organizations attached to this that are all probably funding them money. But yes,
get used to it, man.
It was confirmed today. WWE put out the press release that next January, men's and women's Royal Rumble in Riyadh next year.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't really come as a surprise at this point. We kind of spoke about this, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on Friday. Cole and McAfee are on camera, and we get in the background LA Knight, Rey Mysterio, the War Raiders, and Bill Simmons, producer of a Unknown documentary that's also available on Netflix now. And then we had our first wave of...
So Bill Simmons was caught on his phone during this on camera, and poor guy was... I think...
What's he supposed to do in this situation? Is he supposed to be mugging for the camera?
Don't act like you never
This would
pulled...
100% be me if I was in this situation, only I wouldn't be in the front row.
Don't act like you never pulled your phone out, people, while you're at waiting anywhere.
What if he was taking notes?
It could be, yeah. And I think he was having fun with this with his actual on camera later on.
So then we saw Gabriel Iglesias, Ashton Kutcher, Michael Che, Wale, and then Rey Mysterio.
That all rhymes. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't realize all of that.
Che, Wale, Rey.
Yes. John Cena comes out in his LA Dodgers attire. Are they going to have all the team's colors? This will be a throwback to 2002, except it's merchandise that they hike up the prices for in every market he appears in?
I'm going to say the answer is yes. I am going to say they will sell out in every town that they go to. Yeah.
Mark Shapiro, probably was was sweating just watching this. Like, oh my God, the engagement. Mm-hmm. So he comes out and welcomes us to Netflix and talks about all the different countries where you fans can now be heard. He listed off all these countries minus Taiwan, and then mentioned his history here in LA, sleeping in his car over in Venice, talks about UPW where the prototype was born. Almost got a Rick Bassman shout out here, Way. And he lists off what all the experts think could be his final opponent. Could it be Drew McIntyre? And he was just gauging the audience reactions here. Mm-hmm. Punk, Logan, Gunther, Cody Rhodes, and said that, will I become the record-setting 17-time champion? But he does not see this happening. Why? Because of the streak. And what streak is this, Way? I forgot about this talking point, this absolutely ludicrous talking point that John Cena introduced during one of his last appearances. His streak that it has been 2,446 days since he last won a match.
Yeah.
2,446 days if you exclude dark matches, tag matches. So it's his last on-camera singles victory that this streak extends back to the greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia against Triple H. So, man, wouldn't it be just a cherry on top if he could end this streak in Saudi Arabia this year?
I guess it's possible.
John Cena's final Saudi Arabia trip.
He breaks the record in Saudi Arabia. At this point, I wouldn't rule it out. Yeah. Wonderful. I mean, listen, it's still a significant plot point. The fact that he has not won a televised singles match in that amount of time.
All I'm going to say is if you go to his cage match and you look at how many singles wins he's had in this time, it's ludicrous. Especially at a time when they are actively emphasizing like this stuff now on TV.
Some dark matches count, but most dark matches are just simply not canon and not recognized, right? I don't get so mad at it. I mean, it's very amusing if you are even aware of what cage match is, but for the purposes of the story, I think it works.
Why is he allowed in the Royal Rumble then?
Anybody's allowed in the Rumble.
No, they're not. It's not just.
Do you forget the many times where like celebrities out of nowhere or like legends just like make appearances?
They're not on losing streaks.
Some of them are not active at all.
How about the people that don't get into the Rumble every year that win plenty of matches over the previous year?
Well, he's very popular.
He was very presumptive here. So he says that you never say never here, and it would take a miracle for me to have a chance at winning another title. I'd have a better chance of winning an Oscar, and he would have to do something crazy, like win Money in the Bank or survive Elimination Chamber or win the Royal Rumble. I might sound goofy reciting this. John Cena's delivery was tremendous of just like milking this for all it was worth with the crowd. And they were they're like, yes, you could win the Royal Rumble, John. And he suggests maybe I can win it because nothing is impossible for me. And the only time we say never is never give up. And I'm not just going to the Royal Rumble. I'm going to win the Royal Rumble. And these 17,000 who had spent probably $500 a shot, they were just so excited. They're like, we'll follow you to every town, John. We'll buy every shirt, hat, and sock combo for $200 a collector's item. And John Cena is off to the Royal Rumble next month.
He is, yeah. I thought it was overall like a very well orchestrated announcement, essentially, of his entry into the Royal Rumble match proper. It also sets the stage for his like year-long arc of attempting to break the Flair record. Beyond that, it sets up his entry into the Rumble. Presumably, it'll likely set up his entry into the Elimination Chamber as well, yes, assuming he fails at the Rumble. And then maybe
it could come down to Punk and Cena could be like your at least final four.
Yes,
I think that would be very likely. It could even be your final two.
And potentially even the Money in the Bank after that. So you already have like a year-long storyline, a year-long chase for John Cena in his final year. And I loved him playing up the losing streak, even though, they had to be very creative with it. Because we are setting the journey from a low point, and therefore even getting his first singles win on television is going to be a big deal whenever that is. And I have the perfect first opponent, Austin Theory. Needs to get that win back. Austin Theory has like it could be Austin Theory. It could be like a number of people that he's actually like lost to in recent years that he could just get some of those wins back. Like Theory at this point, I don't know if he could build a much bigger match than a match against John Cena.
That'd be a great match to do, if not on Netflix before the Rumble, on that Saturday night's main event.
Yeah, totally.
One of those shows. And that's a perfectly logical opponent to do it with. Maybe it's like he comes out and says, you have to qualify for the Rumble. And that's
you have to avenge all your losses. Okay.
Well, that's a lot of losses then.
You got to go back into the Firefly Funhouse this time against Uncle Howdy. You got to get that back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that was definitely an L. This is when Logan Paul was shown in the audience, and he was just pointing to his watch that it's his time.
Not on this episode. Like maybe he was scheduled for more.
No, we had no time for you. Yeah. So unless he was maybe just congratulating Tiffany Stratton. Then we got our next wave. Seth Green, former Raw host. Macaulay Culkin, who I'm not kidding, had one of the biggest pops on this show.
Oh, absolutely.
And this guy, total worker. He's got his head down, and when he popped it up for dramatic effect and they realized, oh my God, Kevin McAllister's here. Smart kid.
I mean, I feel like the Culkin brothers have to get involved at this point somehow. We've had every celebrity do something in professional wrestling except those two.
Is WWE too big for
the Paul brothers versus the Culkin brothers?
Oh, the other Roman.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And we get good son, Macaulay Culkin.
Ooh, okay. Nice.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. and then Danielle Fischel Topanga. Hope I'm pronouncing her name accurately. Poor Eric Matthews.
Yeah, Will Friedle. Why didn't he get some love here?
Didn't even get an acknowledgement.
The fuck?
He was... They show him here. He's in the shot. They don't identify him at all. The announcers don't know who the hell this guy is. And then they go to Naomi and Belair, and there's there's Will Friedle in the background for their shot too. It's like this guy can't get away from the camera. And I didn't know what was going on here. They go to Sean Waltman. Then they pan down to Nakamura, and then they go back to Waltman a second time.
I'm guessing they didn't have the key ready. When they did have the key ready, then they went back to Waltman. It got so confusing with these lower thirds that eventually they just dropped the lower thirds altogether.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm.
Our next match number 2 at 9:30 p.m. This is when I think I texted you. Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. And God, these entrances were long, dude. I mean,
yeah, and so I guess we should know, like, so during the commercials, we got we got the full entrances, and then we would get like video packages just teeing up the feud, similar to what premium Peacock users get in the US during the PLEs. And during the matches themselves, when they would go to commercials, it would be like a dip to black and then fade back up as we go back to action.
I do like that we get the entirety of the match. Like
I don't
I
because
know
it's usually worthless content that like doesn't have any like bearing on the story. And it just takes away my ability to like, use
I don't think that's going to be the
bathroom.
case though. When this is like such a huge amount of your audience is like international, that's going to get these breaks. I don't think it's going to just be like chin locks and stuff during these breaks.
I don't think they'll give you any significant like plot point, for instance, during these breaks.
I don't think they're going to do a finish or anything like that, but we will see as time emerges. One thing they were definitely doing, Rock did drop a bullshit line, but when there was like swearing in the ring, or I think Pat McAfee said something, like they were actively censoring any swearing from the performers.
Oh, from the performers, but not from the crowd.
Not from the crowd. No, the crowd was chanting and they were letting that just fly. But there were several instances of censoring performers.
Technically, the show is still rated PG. So whatever rules they have to abide by there.
And then there's Dwayne rules.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. I thought Terry might drop an F-bomb later with his frustrations. So Ripley is fighting back early on. Dominic gets into an argument with Pat, and Pat says, "Well, I don't speak, bitch." And this was uncensored. The Riptide gets blocked. She had multiple attempts at the Riptide, and then Ripley's shoulders thrown into the turnbuckle, so playing off the past injury. But Ripley slides underneath, hits a Riptide for a big near fall, and we got the 7 out of 10 Ruby Soho from Rhea Ripley on this near fall. Dom gets on the apron. That leads to an Oblivion onto the chair for another near fall. Liv does the Three Amigos, hits the frog splash. Rhea kicks out, and then Rhea blocks Oblivion, holds Liv, slams her down. 1 Riptide, 2 Riptides, and pins Liv Morgan, winning the championship in 11 minutes and 41 seconds. Dominic sneaks up from behind, and then as she catches him, he opens his arms for a hug, and you know where this is going. Liv punts his balls into the upper deck and hits him with the Riptide. Got a huge pop. And then as Ripley is celebrating at the entrance, the Undertaker's gong hits. And then it goes into American Badass. And out comes Mark Calloway, fresh off of his big year of podcast interviews. And he just comes out, doesn't even acknowledge Rhea, drives around the ring. It's like, is he just going to leave Rhea hanging here? But then he does go back and fist bumps Rhea. They put their fist in the air, and out they go. Just kind of a, hey, Taker, you want to fly in and do something? What do you have in mind? Well, not much, but we can fit you in. Sure, I'm down.
I was fine with this. I don't know what more. You know what I liked about this?
You know what I liked about this? In the old era of these Legends coming back shows, the spot they would have done is Undertaker would have come out to save Rhea, and he would have laid out Dominic. And instead, they gave the big spot to Rhea. And it's a small thing, but it's indicative of how Paul Levesque and WWE have booked these Legend shows, where it's always about the current stars, and the Legends are typically garnish, unless it's a Cena who's coming back. This was about Undertaker endorsing Rhea, but not overshadowing Rhea and everyone and the big pop for Taker. Because Taker doing a big last ride onto Dominic, sure, big pop, but instead they gave it to Rhea, and I like that little aspect of this segment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for this sort of like show that has a lot of people rewatching WWE for the first time, I think you want as many recognizable big name, faces as you can get. And that was, I think, certainly the attempt. This one wasn't even announced beforehand, to my knowledge.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So like a nice little surprise. The match itself, I thought it was a good match, but I didn't really feel anything all that special about this one either in terms of action. But clearly, like this crowd was still very vocal by this point, enough for them, and gave you, I think, a conclusion to what seems to be like the blow off of the story. Would you say?
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rhea moves on and gets into more serious programs, and you get some women up into this division. Like we've run the gamut with the Judgment Day and Rhea at this point. I mean, yeah, like even Raquel doesn't feel like something like that. It just doesn't feel like a follow up for Rhea at this point. I think you have to build up Raquel if you're going to go that route.
I think we're still a few weeks like from Rumble. Like not to even say like she might have a role in the Rumble, but like there's still a lot of time you got to fill for Rhea until you get to WrestleMania, and I do think like Raquel would be one of the people that you would probably want to do a match with at some point.
Well, it's enough time that you would think you want to have some short term deal with Rhea, and maybe that does fit a Raquel of someone who's out for revenge on Liv and could do something quick. The New Day are up in one of the boxes with all the geeks just going nuts over the Undertaker. Kathy Kelly is backstage with Adam Pearce, who is speaking with Bayley, the ever lodged transfer window, still open apparently. And
so I mean, again, like the transfer window just seems to mean anybody can appear on any show from now until whenever. Like likely WrestleMania. Is that what we're guessing?
Yeah, 42.
Yeah.
American Made walk in. They brag about destroying Alpha Academy, and Chad Gable wants to get back to singles matches and tells Adam Pearce to find the best luchador for me to face next week. And Pearce has the perfect person. He asks Gable if he's sure, and that will be next week. Chad Gable versus a luchador.
Mascara Dorada.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe they'll need a contract to put Penta to paper.
Very good.
Or Penta paper. That would have been the smoother one. Sorry. Jackie interviews The Miz. I guess this was an exclusive for us?
Yes.
Okay,
I believe so.
The Final Testament were making their way onto the Netflix premiere. The Miz just talks about Cena entering the Rumble. Karrion Kross and Scarlett come in, and they want Miz to fight the Wyatt Six with them. He refuses. So Kross talks about how you beat Cena at WrestleMania and tricks Miz into agreeing. And then the screen flickers, and Miz says, I could beat John Cena again. Don't know if that one's going to be on the farewell tour. And so we'll get another Final Testament Wyatt Six match.
Yeah, I kind of like seeing some of these. They felt very loose. The first one that they did with the New Day, they almost like missed their time cue. But I think there's like an organic, like, looseness to this that you don't often see in the content of the shows. Really what they're doing is just like crowd work. You get to see like for 3 minutes, how does a Miz engage the crowd?
These should all be improv. Like
I think they are.
I'm sure they are, but they should be by design for people that don't always have the experience of doing these promos. Like, hey, you have to hit a time cue. It's still it's an international audience. It's not like you're just talking to some local market or something. These could be really good.
Jackie is very good at controlling these as well.
Then we see this footage. It's full on The Rock again, totally out of character, coming backstage. He just hugs all around to everybody, and then he walks up to Cody. I come in peace, and they just have another embrace. Dude, this feud is done. It's over.
It's over. Yeah.
And then we get the announcement, a semi-surprising one. I guess Ava got some time with Dad at the Golden Globes last night and talked him into showing up at New Year's Evil on Tuesday night. So Dwayne Johnson will be on the CW tomorrow, and if NXT doesn't do their biggest number ever on Tuesday, I'll be stunned.
Yeah, this is quite the get for him.
They have like these NXT shows, like these specials that they build up, like they have like a pretty much full match lineup. I have to imagine something's getting cut because a Rock segment where he goes out and probably goes overtime. Like, there's no way that they're going to cram everything that they had announced into those 2 hours. Like, maybe they can, but to me, I mean, this is the person you do blow up a format for.
Yeah.
Vanessa Hudgens was there. Michelle McCool, Damage Control. There's a lot of people. And I think this will probably be a consistent thing we see. Maybe not this degree of celebrities, but I do think we're going to see, like they've certainly indicated there's going to be, celebrity tie-ins and stuff like that. And it does have like that appeal that UFC relies on of, showing these people in the crowd, making it feel like a happening atmosphere. And then away we go to Travis Scott, the man whose new song 4x4 is going to be the new theme of Raw, not the member of the No Limit Soldiers back in WCW, but a song called 4x4. And out comes Travis Scott and making its debut on Netflix. We didn't get Penta, but man, we got Travis Scott's Blunt.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Man, I think Braden just got his best entrance sealed for 2025 because nothing's touching this. Listen, Jey Uso doing this entrance in this Intuit Dome was built for a Jey Uso entrance. I thought this entrance was amazing.
It was excellent. They incorporated a lot of new drone shots for the Jey Uso entrance. It's a perfect entrance to use that sort of technology with. I'm gonna say it now.
It's just amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. It's great. Yeah. I think in California.
And he came out with this replica hardcore championship, which
it's not a replica. He was handed that title by Triple H. It's official. Yeah, on stage. He is officially the WWE Hardcore Champion.
Good for him. Yeah.
And I guess with that comes, the ability to, smoke indoors, at least in California.
I guess so. Yes. So this entrance was amazing.
Excellent.
And we go to Jey Uso and Drew McIntyre. Michael Cole notes that Drew McIntyre, a couple of years ago, had a match with Roman Reigns at Clash at the Castle for the Undisputed Championship. And the Bloodline, specifically Solo Sikoa, screwed that up for Drew McIntyre. Specifically not Jey Uso screwed that up for Drew McIntyre. It's worth noting. So Jey does a dive onto Drew. Drew just he was great here. He does the yeet sign, and the disgust on this man's face as he did it as a parody was tremendous. This was probably any kind of Drew Jey Uso TV house show match you would imagine, but it did have a crowd that was pretty into things for a good period of it. They didn't go too long. They had 10 minutes, 20 seconds. Drew hit a future shock. They're trading. Drew comes off the ropes, lands a Claymore for a big near fall, and then Jey collapses out of the corner, so Drew can't hit another Claymore, and then he's setting up in the corner, waiting for Jey to get to his feet, but then Jey ducks the Claymore and uses a crucifix to catch Drew McIntyre out of nowhere, and it's Jey Uso that gets the win, and Drew McIntyre is furious.
Yeah. They protected Drew in the loss by giving Jey this sort of desperation win, sort of. I imagine this isn't the last time we'll probably see the pairing, but for tonight, it lets Jey look cool upon entrance. He gets the win, but Drew still kind of maintains a good level of dominance. But I have to say, I don't think the match did a whole lot for me at all. Maybe for me, but I also think I sensed from the crowd I was lacking a certain energy from it, and this is where this started to sound like a 3-hour crowd. I found way more interest.
Could it have been the smoke in the air that was affecting the
Could
crowd?
have been that.
Did you notice when he came down, Travis Scott sat with Michael Cole and Pat McAfee? I was like, oh, we're gonna get this guy on commentary now.
I did too. Yeah, mm-hmm.
But he never spoke or anything, so he wasn't on commentary. But he sat next to Cole, and I thought he was going to be on commentary.
Am I mistaken? Like, weren't we supposed to get a performance or something?
I don't know if they had ever quite said if there would be a performance. That does ring a bell, but I can't remember if they had promoted.
I feel like we barely even heard the new song.
No. I think they had just like a short sample of it. Like when he came out here.
Yeah. Okay.
Travis Scott made an impact.
Entrance was great. I didn't love the match so much, but
yeah, I mean, I was not too blown away by any of the wrestling at this point on this show. And the fact that, listen, I understand there was a lot packed onto this show, but when we're going into it's like 10:30 and we've had 3 matches. I mean, it's a lot. And we're watching this pretty much commercial free as well.
As were the people live. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if this was on the show proper, if this was an international thing, the Gunther vignette, because this was the only representation of Gunther on this show. And he's just destroying a heavy bag in the gym and says, everyone's talking about a new era, but it's not a new era for me. I am still where everyone's dreams and hopes go to die. The light at the end of their tunnel, because I hold the prize they all want. I am the world heavyweight champion. I am the Ring General. I am Gunther. Best character of the year.
Your best character of 2024. All the picks are up right now at postwrestling.com from our best and worst of show.
I love this spot. It was like 60 seconds of Gunther, but it was just great.
It was excellent.
Then we had time for Kathy Kelly with Gabriel Iglesias to promote his Netflix special tomorrow. He is interrupted by the New Day, who state that Kathy should be interviewing them, not this fluffy buffoon. And Iglesias says, I liked you guys a lot more when you had cereal. And then Alpha Academy walk in, and Iglesias starts a New Day sucks chant, and Xavier Woods notes, we are not going to be watching your special tomorrow.
Yeah.
Synergy. Synergy.
I wasn't planning to either.
Roman and Heyman were in the back. Heyman wants to hold a ceremony where the world will acknowledge Roman Reigns now as the original tribal chief, and they set it for January 27th in Atlanta, and then they walk into a room with a 2K25 logo on it.
Yeah, which seems to heavily tease Roman's involvement with 2K25 and likely being the cover star for this year. WWE games themselves publicized that they would announce something on the 28th, so presumably that's like when you get the launch of everything.
Okay. There was quite a reaction to this logo. I was like, okay. The game.
Well, these new games, every time they come out, like, they're a big deal, you know? So.
Yeah, it's annual, though. Like, this game's coming. It was like, 2K25. It's a new year. It's a new game.
They
didn't reveal anything.
Being on the cover, though, is still something they recognize as big, right? They had, like, a lot of fanfare, really, every time they've announced something. Like, Punk even had his big ceremony, right?
Mm-hmm. Then Jackie interviewed Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest wearing God knows what. I don't know how many animals died for this outfit that Damian was wearing. Rhea explains that Liv took everything from her, including her shoulder, took Dominic, took my family, meaning the Judgment Day. Look at this thing. And then took my championship. That's where I draw the line, but she could never beat me one-on-one. And next week, it's a street fight between Damian Priest and Finn Balor, and he stated that this is where the beef comes to an end. The beef will end. So
it's not like these are like, without substance. Again, I believe this was also during a commercial break. It's not like they're without substance. They do announce things, but they're things that would have likely been announced at some point anyway. Yeah, that's about it.
Tiffany Haddish, Stephen Amell, Braun Breaker, Tiffany Stratton, who got a very big pop, and Nikki Bella was there as well.
Interesting. No Brie.
Brie was not there. No. And then, to the tune of Real American, out comes Hulk Hogan, and the man I felt very bad for, the 81-year-old Jimmy Hart coming out, who was unfortunate.
You have nothing to feel bad for about Jimmy, okay? If by this point Jimmy Hart is not aware of what's going on, I mean, like, he's kind of built his
fair enough.
Built a career off of being next to Hogan. So.
Well, he was the collateral damage in this, because out comes Hogan, and you can immediately hear, like, they are playing around with the audio here, and it was pretty audible to me that they were
really,
when he came out, it felt like something was off. I'm not a audio expert, so I can't say definitively.
Because if they did play with it, they did not play with it enough. Clearly.
No, they did not. I mean, it just felt as though it felt a little off at the beginning, and this was before I could hear the boos, because the music is playing. And so then the music stops, and dude, Hulk Hogan is vociferously booed by this crowd. And Hogan, guy couldn't pivot at all because he had his speech, and he has to talk about how you fans have stuck with me through thick and thin, as he's got to battle this gigantic chorus of boos that is only escalating. And then he's got to promote his Real American beer, which WWE has just announced has come on as a sponsor, and WWE is now a minority owner in. I wonder if the ink was dry on that contract by the end of this segment, as he promotes his beer and compares past partners like Randy Savage and Andre the Giant to WWE teaming with Netflix, as he rips off his Real American beer shirt to reveal a shirt that reads Netflix Gets Raw. And if you have to track down a segment to see one man just look absolutely flabbergasted, it is this segment with Terry Gene Bollea, who just looks like he cannot fathom that this crowd is not into him. And I think we're going to get a brand split way, and in the divorce, TKO is going to be assigning Hulk Hogan UFC duty from now on, because in a UFC audience, they would have torn the house down for Terry Bollea as he came out here. We have talked about so often in this era how this WWE audience, like, they do not hijack segments. They do not cheer heels or boo baby faces. Like, maybe it's a little subtlety.
They haven't had much reason to.
Because they are, I think it's part because they are being satisfied with what is being presented to them. But I think they also feel like we are not here to screw up the show. We're not fighting against this product. And it almost feels as though anything will be just digested by this audience. And then Hulk Hogan appeared, and this was a line in the sand. And maybe you're talking about an LA audience. I don't know if all parts of the country would have this similar reaction to Hulk Hogan. But man, this was just an embarrassing moment for Hulk Hogan, and felt like a guy that is just so divorced from this era of WWE that he did not fit. And to be quite honest, like, take out all the baggage that comes out with Hulk Hogan. Like, here's a guy that, like, there was no purpose to this segment other than to shill his beer. It's like the audience is like, there was nothing here other than this was a product placement with the hope that the legend of Hulk Hogan would carry this product placement. And this audience, they didn't even need to get to the speech. They were not having anything to do with Hulk Hogan on this night.
Yeah. All I could say is thank you, LA. You came through. You made me so proud. I think we're all honorary LA citizens tonight. Listen, like, the whole Hulk Hogan discussion at this point, I had already, like, kind of lost hope, and by that we've spoken about his various advertised appearances, being a part of the Saturday Night's Main Event ad, for instance, and I had felt in my head that the temperature was at a point where I don't know if the audience cared so much about Hulk Hogan anymore, and had people just kind of, like, given up on voicing their displeasure for this guy, and were we just simply going to accept that this person was going to be a regular part of our wrestling consumption. I was so pleased to hear this reaction, to know that this feeling that I feel and that a lot of other people feel is still shared by the wrestling audience at large. It was so interesting seeing them shoot the segment, because they were focusing on all the fans that were happy, that were, like, taking photos, and then as that sort of, like, chorus of boos seeped in, it just, like, it was the most glorious sound I could ever hear. The moment he started to break into the ad was just the best, because that was the worst thing you could do in front of a crowd that already sees you as a liar, as somebody who isn't truly who they claim to be. We've seen you in your Mega Power shirt online already as you entered the city today. You're in LA and you come here to shill your shitty beer. Like, what other reaction did he expect? This was like, this is the most he has been for a long time, one of the most self-unaware people that I think is part of the wrestling industry. Why TKO, why WWE would still want to be involved with him to this degree, that they would sign on, like, whatever brand minority interest in this beer is concerning, because I don't think they made so many bad moves, but, like, this one is a questionable one at this point. I think you have to continue to ask. It's been years now where occasionally, some places he can get away with it, but other places he will still receive this sort of reaction. What is the value of a Hulk Hogan attached to a WWE product? Is it worth the risk of PR, online, reputational damage that he might place onto this show? I would say this was the lone, embarrassing spot on this entire production. Not only that, the guy's got a Netflix logo on his chest and got Netflix booed in this particular segment.
I'll say this about this segment is that my expectation level of figures that are going to do reprehensible things or not show any kind of remorse for certain aspects, character flaws, issues, and that extends across the board, and how so often they are just wholly just accepted. And to see a segment like this in this modern era of fandom, and if it will be specific to UFC and WWE, you, the consumer, you've never mattered less to these companies in the sense that they have these, like, they have set their businesses to where if there were empty buildings for every show, they would still be wildly profitable. These are companies that it is business to business. Selling tickets to you, the consumer, it's a nice add-on, but you are of no value, you are of no consequence to their overall bottom line that these gigantic television and streaming deals and sponsorships and all these other guaranteed revenue markers have. The little power that you have was demonstrated in a segment like this, where suddenly they rejected this individual, they rejected this product. And I will say that I like at times when the people still do have a voice, that you can make your deals with whoever you want, you can go into business wherever you want, but you know what, sometimes the Saudi ads are going to get booed and Hulk Hogan's going to get booed out of the building, and there is still an audience that feels that they are going to voice their displeasure. And I think that that's very healthy to have that.
It's one of the great things about live professional wrestling, isn't it? You know, the fact that, like, if an audience is not happy with what they're seeing, they can tell them, they can tell the writers and maybe institute some change. So the question is any change going to come as a result of this? We've seen him advertise for the second Saturday night's main event.
It's a great question that you bring up about, like, the value of a Hulk Hogan. Like, if this guy was overall, like, somebody that they deem is of value, and this is not just like, hey, we have him booked for San Antonio. It's like, we are now a minority owner in this guy's company. And it really does show you that there is a massive difference between the UFC audience, that there would be zero resistance to a real American beer on the octagon, to, like,
you have Trump receiving this huge applause.
This whole thing, this is the beer that is unapologetically American. This is so in the UFC pipeline of a product that could go right next to Jeremy's Razors. WWE, it's a different audience, especially an LA-based audience that is not going to accept this so willingly. And I think that was a very, very instructive segment to see that difference in an audience, because there ain't a goddamn way. If Hulk Hogan came to the Intuit Dome in 2 weeks for that UFC pay-per-view, I bet you he's cheered wildly.
Yep. It tells me that I think what seems like WWE's very different policies when it comes to mentioning politics and essentially being apolitical in all of their programming is a wise choice, because the opposite effect is something like this. You know, this was about, as I think, unintentionally, as big of a step into, like, political waters as they've had in quite some time, and the audience, at least in LA, showed
and it's
that.
not even being like the idea that it's like a opposition to political affiliation, because you can see, like, there's Paul Levesque on New Year's Eve at Mar-a-Lago, but just keep that out of my entertainment. Keep it off of the screen. I don't think we should be in a world where your political view is different, therefore you're awful. I don't think that is healthy either. With Hulk Hogan, it goes much deeper than that. And I think that is, it is a lot of things.
I mean, I would say largely this response is still, you know, based off of the racial tirade. You know,
I think that is absolutely the core thing. I don't know if it's this response, if it's only the Republican involvement over the last few months. I don't think that's eliciting this reaction.
So again, I'm very curious to see if they continue ahead with promoting him for Saturday night's main event. We saw the ad air again tonight. Will they feature him on the second Saturday night's main event coming up, which is in San Antonio, Texas? You know, will they figure that, hey, like, Texas might give him a slightly different reaction? Again, do they still see enough benefit in having a Hulk Hogan attached to the brand that they'd be willing to risk this sort of thing?
No, they're in business with this guy, so I'd be very surprised if they adjust course. But this was quite the enlightening segment. So awesome. Someone brought this up to me, and I find it interesting because we brought up this hypothetical, and you and I have generally always believed it would get a positive reaction. But this segment definitely made me think twice. If unannounced, and this would never have happened tonight, but let's, for the sake of this exercise, No Chance in Hell plays and a Vince McMahon walks out. What is the reaction in this market? Because 9 times out of 10, I would tell you he would be treated like a total babyface reaction, and everyone would cheer. Probably some boos, but mainly cheers. And this segment, I was not so sure watching this. I think like if a Vince McMahon had shown up tonight in this Intuit Dome, what do you think the reaction would have been?
I think it would be like a holy shit shock, first of all, because I don't think
you would have had that for sure.
And that might sound like cheers. And maybe that's what we heard initially here. Oh my God, I'm seeing Hulk Hogan in front of my eyes.
Naturally. You hear Real American off the top. It's like,
yeah.
It's not like they booed the second that song played, but as soon as he was out, then it was all boos.
As the music dies, you come to your senses, and I think reality sets in. And I mean, Vince McMahon to me is somebody whose reputational damage is greater than Hulk Hogan's at this moment. So I like, if you're talking about tonight, yeah, he would have been totally booed. And I think WWE recognizes that. A better question, I think, would be Brock Lesnar. Like, is Brock Lesnar out of the water, out of the like hot water yet?
They were not, in that cold open video. It was brief, but they put Brock Lesnar in that video. They also like Cole even name checked them during commentary. I get the feeling he is not as off limits as Vince McMahon is. Like, it's, but at the same time, I don't think they're entertaining a Brock Lesnar either at this point. There's no need. But I thought that was interesting looking at it tonight, because if you had told me today, like Hulk Hogan coming in, like, when I put that press release up today, and I did an exercise today where I posted the press release on both Twitter and Blue Sky. And I was curious to see what the responses would be. And it was like 90% on both platforms negative. So that might be more indicative of just my followers and such, but I was kind of interested to see what that would be, but I did not expect this kind of reaction on the show tonight.
Yeah. I will say again, they're seemingly stuck with the Hulk Hogan association with Through the Spear for quite some time.
Imagine the press release was supposed to go out tomorrow instead of today. Before they were going to do this as a soft launch and then announce it tomorrow. I believe
that you will still have Hulk Hogan integration on these shows, but I think this is the last you've seen of him in front of a live audience in quite some time. I think they'll have him do stuff backstage, maybe pre-tapes, like videos with music running loudly underneath, everything, pre-edited, whatever. But I don't know if this is worth the risk, putting him in front of people.
Announced for next week, we have the finals of the Women's Intercontinental Title Tournament with Dakota Kai against Lyra Valkyria, Sheamus against Ludwig Kaiser, the street fight with Damian Priest and Finn Balor, and Chad Gable wrestles a luchador. So 4 matches announced for next week. How long do you think next week's Raw is going to be?
I'm going to say about the same.
Around 3?
Yeah.
What I hated is that in all of his interviews, when Paul Levesque was asked about the length, the example he kept using was, he kept saying, like, it's flexible. It's what the show calls for. And he kept saying, if the show needs to be 45 minutes, it'll be 45 minutes. I'm like, we are never seeing a 45-minute show, so I don't know why you're even throwing that out. And it was multiple interviews. He used that number as the example.
Yeah. I guess what would be the shortest Raw that you would expect if this is to be believed?
2:15. I think will be the shortest.
Okay. Because now you're talking about, like, what length of Raw would be satisfying enough for an audience, and what length would not get people complaining that the show wasn't long enough.
No one complained live. Like, look at the numbers they're drawing for these 2-hour Raws in all these markets. No one complained about that.
Yeah.
I think it's a great over thought aspect of things, of like, you got to give the audience enough. It's like, too often it's like the crowd is like, you give them 2 solid hours. I think a lot of wrestling fans are satisfied with 2 hours. Right. Stephanie McMahon showing in the crowd. And then we had the Saturday night's main event promo featuring Terry Bollea, which I am convinced that when that promo was first released, like weeks ago, you and I talked about it. And I don't think too many people were aware of that promo being out there, because it seems like it was like surprising that Hulk Hogan is on this San Antonio show. And it's been weeks since that promo was put out, like way back, right after the first show. Seth Rollins and CM Punk, we are going to the main event, and both Rollins and Punk tell referee Rod Zapata basically to F off. Don't get in our way. And they are getting into things right away. We tease a curb stomp, a He's a GTS, and it gets stopped as Rollins elbows him, and Punk starts focusing on the neck, including a neck breaker off of the top. And Punk at one point goes down and he just leans against the barricade. And this front row, they all stand and they're clapping like the guy's just sunk a putt or something. And there is Kieran Culkin himself among them. Rollins then catches him with his own GTS. And my God, when they showed this replay, it looked like they sent Punk's nose into the back of his head. And then Rollins lands a second GTS and Punk manages to kick out. They fight on the desk. Rollins hits a pedigree, but injures his knee in the process, rolls Punk into the ring, hits a second pedigree, and Punk, after kicking out of 2 GTSs, kicks out of 2 pedigrees, making up for 2011. And then Punk lands a head kick. The step-up knee is caught. He's hit with the buckle bomb and the curb stomp. Punk gets his foot on the rope as Michael Cole is asking if Rollins will extract the demon from his soul. Will he extract it? And Rollins hits the superplex, goes for the Falcon Arrow, but in the follow-up attempt, it is turned into a GTS, and Rollins falls against the rope, selling the GTS, and then collapses, landing on Rollins' shoulders, and Punk just lifts him up and struggles to hit a second GTS, which puts Rollins down in 18 minutes and 57 seconds. And you can even see Punk like relaying something to the referee, who goes to check on Rollins, and then raises the arm, and there we have it. The debut of the Raw end credits. Paul Levesque and Lee Fitting. That is how the show had its fitting end. And we were kind of done at like 5 after the top of the hour. It was like a normal, like just a small overrun after 11, which we shouldn't call an overrun anymore.
No. So I wonder if like obviously things were cut. Like maybe the New Day segment was the casualty. Was anything else cut? I'm sure we'll find out in the hours to come. I didn't catch this, but I'm seeing online that he Punk mouthed to the camera that he dedicated the match to Chris Bay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was this after? Because
after, yeah.
Well, how did someone see this? Because my feed.
So it might have been from the post show. Might have been.
Like, that's right, because they went immediately to the post show. Oh, that's cool that he gave a shout out to Chris Bay.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, but I mean, I thought this was a very good match.
This was the lone match that I thought was like really enjoyable on this show, because I did not think the wrestling was like this. This was a show all about the bells, the whistles, the production, the celebrities. It was everything but the wrestling. I felt like that was like a distant priority on this show.
Yeah. I mean, almost every match, and certainly like the first match, the Liv Rhea match, and this match all had very substantial build, heading into it. But this was the only match that felt like it was like your big pay-per-view level sort of like conclusive ending to a feud. And funny enough, like I could actually see them running this one back. But this to me was like a pay-per-view quality match, and reminded us what a big stage performer Seth Rollins is, how great in-ring CM Punk can still be. This is 2 in a row now that he's had tremendous wrestling matches. And I mean, seems to maybe set the course for Punk towards Rumble and then maybe towards a WrestleMania challenge.
All right. There were a couple of notes here. They did do a press conference afterwards for this show, and Andrew Thompson has a whole like rundown of it, but CM Punk was one of the people at the press conference, and he talked about the fact that the part of the business that is just so bittersweet is because I'm just now starting to understand it and my body is falling apart. And he talked a bit about his injury, and then he said he's focused on securing championship gold in 2025, but not against working with either The Rock or Cena. Punk does not think headlining WrestleMania is the end-all be-all for him. He said he could have had a Hall of Fame career even if he never came back to WWE. He said Seth Rollins is a killer. Punk feels Rollins does not need to act or dress the way he does. He added that the Rollins he faced and went back and forth with on the microphone the week prior is what he wants to see. Punk feels he brings the best out of the people he's in the ring with.
Thank you, Andrew Thompson. Anything else?
No, I mean, that was Raw, and I think we kind of went through all of our overall thoughts of the show.
Well, I'm curious your overall thoughts of the experience, as a, like, I mean, obviously it's hard to get in the shoes of somebody maybe watching this for the first time in a long time, but how do you think this was as a debut show?
I thought the important aspect was how big the spectacle was, and on that side of things, like this had to have been an A+. Like they made this feel like the hottest thing. The Netflix WWE promotion was incredible over this last year, but especially we saw when it was ramped up over these last 4 or 5 weeks. They were just out everywhere. They made this feel like this had the production value of like all but the biggest shows in the history of this industry. They really incorporated the Intuit Dome really well here. It might be too much production for some. I can see that because it's such a stark amount that they put into this show. I always like the deal where you try to get celebrities on camera, and they were very good with that. Like it just gives the feel of like this is the big in event. So they were able to accomplish that. I mean, Raw will settle into a flow of things. This is obviously going to be a real high point for the start of the show, and where we see this in like 4 or 5 months in terms of this being, are they going to be able to grab a lot of new eyes and to be able to continue this and also like the show length. Like I can't imagine if you were coming in and you watch this and you're a lapsed fan, are you coming back each week? And this was a 3-hour endeavor. I think that's a hard sell to come back the next week for people, because like even this show, and this was like loaded with so much. It's 3 hours is still 3 hours.
Yeah, that to me I felt was the biggest obstacle and the biggest challenge. And I'm somebody who I think like on the Best and Worst Stuff show, I said like the show feels like it fits 3 hours now. In fact, I kind of missed 3 hours. I might have said that. I didn't think the show was a good 3 hours, like there was so much dead time in between, and I've come to expect it, but I think maybe it's just simply emphasized because this show was something that they were trying to frame as a PLE, and therefore you had a lot of emphasis on the wrestling, but because it was somewhere in between a PLE and a TV show, there was so much dead time in between, like the entrances and the video packages, and then like the wrestling that didn't always matter throughout the commercials. That I felt like it wasn't very satisfying in either direction. To me, it was missing like you had a great Rock segment, a Paul Levesque introduction. But I felt like we were missing like some very big promo segments. Otherwise, even the Rock one wasn't really all that satisfying. In fact, it was likely there just to kind of like deflate interest. So
I thought coming out of this, we'd at least have some kind of hint at something for Mania, and there was definitely nothing of that. And maybe we should be realistic that, in this era where you're presenting 3 hours on Monday, for the time being, we'll get into this, 3 hours on Friday, like WrestleMania is until mid-April. Like that is a long way away.
Yeah, I really do wonder, and I believe I have to think this is entirely Netflix's call, the length of the show. Like, I wonder if it would have not been a better idea to keep the show at 2 hours while you're trying to acquire a new fan base for at least a few months, and then gradually, once you've established the show here, then move on to 3 hours so that you could sell more ads. Like
if you're someone that's just swooping in, or you're a new fan, I think the mentality of leave them wanting more is the mentality I would shoot for.
International fans will not have that privilege because we're coming back tomorrow with 2 hours and then Friday again with 3.
Well, those are the nuts, but it's a lot. And even for your regular fans, like you're going after like months of these 2 hour shows. Granted, I think that like, this is not a typical 3 hour episode. Like you're not going to have this level every week where you're going to have a Rock segment and you're going to have a Cena segment and you're going to have all this other stuff. Maybe Hogan can be a regular. He could come back each week.
Oh, highlight of the show. Yeah.
All right, that was the first show. We're just going to zip through some news items, and then we do want to make some time for your feedback. So we're not going to go through all of these, but we referred to it. But today when Paul Levesque was on the Pat McAfee show, he did mention that SmackDown is moving to 3 hours on the USA Network, but then it will be moving back to 2 hours. He didn't state when this will be, but Brandon Thurston did get some information about this, and apparently WrestleVotes had mentioned this a couple of months back, that it looks to be like the 3 hour format will go till the end of May, and in June it would shift to 2 hours. I don't know if that means this is going to be a seasonal thing. Like, is it going to shift back and forth? I can't tell you why they're doing this either. it's confusing to say the least, and I don't know what the advantage is. If anything, you would think during the summer months it would make more sense to be 3 hours where there's less original programming and you could get more. I don't know. I don't know what necessarily the thought process is here, how the financial side of it works for this, but if they are shifting back to 2 hours in June, I will not be complaining.
No, I almost don't want to get excited for this coming back, because I just feel like we were excited about the 2 hour switch, and then we got the 3 hour switch back, and then we're going to get excited about 2 hours only to get 4 hour shows eventually. So I'm done with this roller coaster of emotions. I just, whatever it is, all right, I'm going to accept.
New Japan followed up their 2 nights at Tokyo Dome with New Year Dash today in front of 2,348 fans at Ota Ward Gymnasium. I watched the entire show, and I thought this was like a really lackluster follow-up to the 2 nights. New Year Dash is usually one of the most fun shows of the year. It's all like Mystery Vortex where they don't announce the card until the show begins. And, it's even in lieu of blow away great wrestling matches. They're all fun matches, and you get a bunch of angle shot. And I wouldn't say either was in plenty. There weren't a lot of either on this show. The main stuff they pushed was Zack Sabre Jr. will defend against Hiroki Goto February 11th in Osaka at the New Beginning show. There was a heavy tease of Yota Tsuji against Gabe Kidd for the global heavyweight title. Gabe Kidd came out, and he's still with the War Dogs. The War Dogs are still heels, but you could tell this crowd, they see Gabe Kidd as a star, and they are going to be fighting a tide to try and keep this guy as a heel. But it does seem like they are keeping him with the heel unit, but he definitely felt like, this was a career-changing match for him.
I find a Tsuji follow-up to be really interesting, because I think coming out of this, Gabe Kidd is arguably like one of the hottest, if not the hottest, representative babyface for the next generation of New Japan right now. And to pair him with the guy that I think the rest of the audience sees as the biggest holder of that title, I don't think it necessarily guarantees a babyface follow-up reaction for Gabe Kidd. And if it does, well, what does it do for Yota Tsuji? So I don't see a clear heel in that particular feud, so I do question it.
And also, coming up this Saturday night is Battle in the Valley, and we will have a show Sunday with Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord, and that show is headlined by Gabe Kidd defending the strong openweight title against Tomohiro Ishii, which will be a very interesting match, and I'm curious how that San Jose crowd, I think Gabe Kidd is going to feel like a big star on that show, and he's in the main event as well. Yep. They also did an angle. The House of Torture stole the Never 6-man titles, so look for them to have a match with Tanahashi, Yano, and Bolton. And speaking of Oleg Bolton, they did a 5-minute exhibition with him and Josh Barnett, which, unlike the Tanahashi and Shibata exhibition, was an actual grappling exhibition for 5 minutes, and this 5 minutes went by so quick. And then Barnett gave this wonderful speech about he's been over there in the dojo training and working with Bolton among others, and he said that you passed the first lesson by showing up. You went the 5 minutes with me and said, you're going to be a champion one day. I'm going to coach you to be a champion one day. It was like this wonderful, heartwarming speech. And then Bolton takes the mic and he's basically like, I don't understand English too well. Oh. And then he spoke in his limited Japanese. And so you weren't quite sure if Bolton understood this wonderful message that Barnett gave him, but it was a fun 5 minutes. I have a lot of high hopes for Oleg Bolton. The G1 made me a real believer in this guy. But the main talking point coming from this story is the person that you heard no talking from on this show, and it was the absence of Chris Charlton on commentary, because the show begins and it was Walker Stewart solo, and then they didn't have Rocky Romero because Romero worked in the main event 8-man, and then midway through the show TJP came on and did commentary. So at one point in the show, Jeff Cobb is out for this was after his match that he was involved in. And he walks up to Walker Stewart and he asks Walker, why are you alone out here? And Walker Stewart can't say anything. And Cobb just warns him to watch what you say. And Walker's response is, I guess we all need to. And so we're watching this, and I'm busy asking around, seeing if there is something here. And it subsequently has come out that Chris Charlton was pulled from this show. I was told by one person that it was a 2-month suspension. And I was asking around trying to confirm that. I have not confirmed that, although that's what Fightful has reported as well, the 2-month suspension. Dave Meltzer has stated it's an indefinite hiatus. Either of the two, he was removed from this show, and it was very obvious because when Chris is not on the shows, it's usually because they're out, like he works in the office, but he does not miss the Tokyo shows and much less a Dash show, which is a really important show. So right there, it was, coming off of everything. But I will tell you, and I spoke about this on the review, like I found some of the commentary to be a lot. It was just, like my personal enjoyment of the commentary. I really enjoy Chris Charlton's work, and I just found it to be a lot over the top. By no means did I listen to anything and think this is some kind of punishable issue that we're talking about here. So I was very surprised by this. We do not know all the specifics other than it does appear that Chris was removed from the show, and there was obviously issues with the commentary that he had on the show directed at AEW. There was, for one, and I do want to stress this point because the way I heard it was the money mark line that a lot of people have referred to. If you listen to it, he is stating that, what Gabe Kidd had said was, and then he was kind of just paraphrasing and used the money mark term. Granted, there were plenty of other comments that Chris Charlton had against AEW. What I could say, though, is that to your point, Wai, I don't doubt for a minute that this was in service of the story, that Chris Charlton was executing this. I don't think there was anything, you're out there and you're selling a story. And yeah, sometimes you might say things that are going to be a little too close to the bone, but you're trying to sell something. This is like the Hangman Page line against CM Punk. I don't doubt that Hangman was trying to sell a match and use something real. But if the person taking it has the wrong reaction, well, there can be negative fallout. And unfortunately, that's what it seems like here with Chris Charlton. And
yeah.
So why don't you share some of your thoughts?
Just wanted to add maybe some other sort of context to some of the occurrences. We had Tony Schiavone in a now deleted tweet.
I thought Schiavone came off terrible with that comment he made today. I thought, honestly, if you were to tell me, if you were to say that one company got so upset with one of their employees that Charlton is facing a punishment for this, I don't know how you don't have an issue with this. Was just...
Yeah, just reading the tweet. This was at about 4:00 in the afternoon, and he since deleted it. Tony Schiavone tweets, "Hey, at Reason JP, which is Chris Charlton's handle, speaking for all of us in AEW, GFY, and speaking for all of us who have been around you, take a shower once in a while." So,
that to me was just so unprofessional.
I mean, the way I read it, I took it to mean more angle. Listen, this is professional wrestling. You can never really tell. You can never tell what's seriously heated. I tend to give Tony the benefit of the doubt in thinking that, okay, a guy who's been around the industry for that long, knowing what he's doing with these words, like a line take a shower once in a while. I just thought it was some way of building towards a rivalry that may eventually see its end.
Tony Schiavone versus Chris Charlton?
Well, just some sort of inter-promotional grudge that they could settle for Forbidden Door, for instance. I mean, that was my speculation. The fact that he since deleted it, I don't know what you think of it, but listen, at this point, it's I think I'm shocked that this has gotten this much press, and obviously with the suspension, it's only ramped it up.
They blew it up to be a much bigger story than it needed to be. If Charlton was, listen, there was a lot of discourse about his commentary, and a fair amount of it was negative. But if he had just done New Year Dash, that was a one-day Twitter story. And now you've just made it into a much bigger thing than it needs to be. The issue here is that you're talking about two companies that are business partners together. And it is worth noting, Chris Charlton is also an office worker. And I do feel he just ended up in the line of fire here. And I don't agree with the notion of taking this guy off your broadcast. First of all, I think it hampers your broadcast. You have your translator here that you're taking off, and I think Chris Charlton is a really talented broadcaster that you're harming your own product by removing him. And again, it took this story that was only going to exist on Twitter overnight until the next thing happens, and I think you just made it a lot bigger than it needed to be.
I think also worth noting, I believe in the Fightful report, they had also stated that they had heard that it was a strictly New Japan call and not a Tony Khan call.
Yeah.
So I mean that I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if Tony didn't care about it at all, and maybe just thought like I did that it was just working the story.
I've heard nothing regarding Tony Khan's reaction to it, but it seemed consistent to me. Like this was ultimately it's New Japan making this call.
Yes, and I think there are a lot of like things about like the way the Japanese run their businesses, especially with people that are like talking about business partners, whether or not in character, that I don't understand. That is just not as maybe evident to all of us here as it may be for Japanese culture. So I think we have to take all of that into account. But clearly Chris overstepped the line, and New Japan can do what they want. We audiences can maybe speculate about whether or not you agree with it.
How do you feel also with the Gabe Kidd video that led one of the promos he cuts? I mean, it's almost verbatim like what Chris picked up on, and right to insulting AEW and people being brought there and stuck in catering. Like, it wasn't a whole lot different.
Gabe Kidd's promo was him playing a heel, and I've read a lot of discourse, especially on our video that we put up, and a lot of people were unhappy with my comparison to Nigel McGuinness doing it versus like Chris Charlton doing it, because they felt Nigel was an established heel, or at least like a heel commentator, or at least wasn't as overbearing as Chris was throughout the entirety of the show. I personally maintain that like he's in a role, Chris, where I think he can occasionally slightly play more favorite, especially when we're talking about remember the Noah shows?
Yeah, but
he was very he was pro New Japan Pro Wrestling in those. Noah
he
shows
was,
too.
And him and Kevin Kelly received a lot of criticism for that too. That it was just, I don't think that's necessarily what people want from their commentators.
But is it a suspendable offense?
No, it's not. And again, if you want to listen to our thoughts after the show but before this news came out, I just thought the comment, it was too much. I didn't like the comment about he took all these wrestlers and he barely does anything with them. Like, what does that mean in a pro wrestling sense? Like, it's making these wrestlers,
you can bench wrestlers in a pro wrestling sense,
but he's not, and it's, I don't know, to me it's like,
but again, that's what Gabe Kidd said, right? In Gabe
it
Kidd's
is
promo.
But there's obviously different rules here of Gabe Kidd selling a match versus Chris Charlton calling a match. I'm not saying that's fair.
Yeah, should there be?
Well, I don't know what direction Chris had. If Chris was told, hey, no bashing AEW, then yeah, he would be in the wrong. I don't think that was the case. And if he was just thrown out there and he's got to use his instincts, which a lot of commentators have to do, you're flowing with the story, and sometimes,
especially for international language, like non-mainline,
it's like,
commentators.
Yeah, you might step on something that you shouldn't have. That's kind of like what the gig is at sometimes. And it should be something like, yeah, you could say, hey, that's not something we want to be encouraging. Don't do it again, versus taking action here. I think he was in a position, if Chris Charlton just went off the Gabe Kidd promos and used that as fuel for this story that I'm tasked with telling as the New Japan office representative on commentary. Again, I do not at all agree with a punishment over this. But I mean, that obviously New Japan had a different sense of things, and I don't think we know the full extent and the full details of all of this, and if there's aspects that need to be filled in to make more sense of this. But that was a very notable story coming out of Dash, and we are going to end off with a couple of pieces of feedback from people. So we're going to head over to forum.postwrestling.com.
So again, just a reminder, everybody, next, starting on Wednesday, we are going to be live only in the cafe. These shows will still come out afterwards, but on the free feeds, they will be condensed to the reviews themselves. Our news discussion, like John and I just had, as well as the feedback and question period, will be limited to the XL versions that will be available in the Post Wrestling Cafe.
All right, we start off. Who else? Then Jermaine from Chicago. He's been counting down the days till Tribal Combat. He said that they pulled out the stops tonight on a star-driven show. I didn't like Hunter using heel, face, work, or shoot in his promo. Not using it during a show helps you to believe. More bells and whistle run-ins. The bloodline thing is over now, right? Hulk Hogan or his beer should never be in a WWE ring again. They booed him out of the place like they should. It was sad that the actual Raw champion couldn't get on the show live. Punk and Rollins brought the good wrestling, which this company is getting further away from, but says he did enjoy the show.
All right. Brian from New Jersey says, thumbs up for the first Netflix stream, holding up quite well for me. Bigger thumbs up to the crowd in LA for booing Hogan out of the arena. I savored that like the freshly made hot soup I had for dinner. After all the Trump thumping he did, this crowd had no time for the huckster selling his mega beer and talking about his more talented dead friends. His more talented dead friends.
He's referring to Savage and Andre he brought up in the promo.
Okay, the show itself was a pretty good one since Rock and Triple H wrapped things up in the beginning. I found Cena's promo a lot more engaging than Rock's. Satisfying title win for Ripley, not to take away from everything Morgan has accomplished last year. No big surprises in Tribal Combat. Just glad Reigns won. Punk Rollins was the right choice to main event, and I thought it was very good.
Do you feel more solidified in the Cody, Cena, and Reigns Punk directions after tonight, or is it? I'm sure you came into this as like that's still probably the direction. Was that more solidified after tonight?
I think the temperature check from Cena of all the names that he was calling out and probably told us a whole lot. You know, he saved Cody for last, and I would suggest Cody received the biggest reactions. Who would you say received the second biggest reaction in that roll call? Punk or Logan? I feel maybe.
Yeah, Punk seemed to stand out for me. Yeah.
It's an option, but I mean, I think Cody is a better option. Logan is another one I can see them entertaining, but I almost think you should do Logan with like another babyface. Cody, Cena, like seems right to me. The championship's on the line, you know.
All right, we're going to go to Hamilton Dan. I hated Raw tonight. This was my first WWE check-in since attending Money in the Bank in Toronto. I found it incredibly dull. Whether it was Triple H's self-filleting monologue, The Rock trying to garner cheers for Ted Sarandos, or the telecast's endless blabbering about corporate business wins, it all rubbed me the wrong way. It's like that Richard Serra and Carlotta Faye Schoolman art piece, Television Delivers People. WWE is not the product. You are the product. You are being sold. And while that's off-putting enough, couldn't I at least get a better show? The lack of wrestling wasn't an issue for me. It was a lack of entertaining content. I was bored stiff and felt like I was at a WWE multi-level marketing seminar with a bunch of cameos tossed in. Bless you if Tribal Combat, Hulk Hogan, and the comedy stylings of Pat McAfee are your bag. It's just not mine. I think I'll duck out of WWE for a year or two and check back later. I hope Lee Fitting's name isn't on the end credits when that happens. Oh man, Hamilton Dan bringing the heat tonight.
Man, I love that piece of feedback, and I think it does like put into context what this show must look like to somebody who hasn't really been watching in quite some time. If you hadn't been checking in with WWE throughout like this like branding of the Levesque era, this does feel like the sort of like fully actualized version of Mark Shapiro's WWE, of Ari Emanuel's WWE, logos everywhere, you know, celebrities in every sort of segment. I would say low on like the value of in-ring content, because even though they promoted the hell of a lot of these matches, most of the matches were simply not satisfying to a degree that I think most wrestling fans would be looking for. But like a lot of the garnish, a lot of the celebrities, like, you know, Hulk Hogan was on this show, right? So, yeah, thank you very much for that, Hamilton Dan. Let's go to Alex from Portland, who says, that may have been the best episode of Raw I've ever seen.
I love the contrast.
I started about an hour into the show and was able to play the episode from the beginning. I easily fast-forwarded through the ad breaks. The ad breaks were so much better than what we got for Dynamite. And catching up live was a breeze. The visuals for the show impressed, especially the drone shots. Uncensored "fuck you" solo chants were sweet to hear. The varying videos and graphics to set up next week's show look so good. My excitement for next week's is higher than I thought it would be. The content of the show excelled. My only negative is Travis Scott. That dude looks like an utter tool. Okay. Well,
if your biggest negative on the show was Travis Scott, then it must have been a hell of a show, because that was I enjoyed Travis Scott coming out when he lit up that joint, dude. I just thought this was hilarious.
I will say, like, the ability to fast forward through breaks, like, definitely changes my opinion. Like, I think this was the first Raw I actually watched live in quite some time myself.
Yeah, me too, and I would not make a habit of it.
No, me neither.
Alex Francois, just a couple of quick thoughts. Same as with AEW on Max. The sound and picture quality was a huge improvement on Netflix compared to the likes of Sling and Triller. The show felt very much like a UFC template in some ways, with each match feeling a big deal going into it, celeb shots and arena shots galore. However, nothing must-see set up going into Mania season, which surprised me. No Becky Lynch return, for example, and Rock's appearance not setting anything up going forward. Only thing I know for sure is Cena wants to win the Rumble. Also, Shirley Austin would have been a better choice if you want a legend selling beer on a show. Well, they don't have they're not in business with Steve Austin's beer. They're in business with real American beer. So they have Maybe the Sandman will put out a beer.
I feel like it would be a microbrew, if anything. I don't know if he'd have the budget. Andrew from Cape Breton. First, the positives. The show was a spectacle. It had a great presentation and it felt big. The matches were okay, with the main event being the main highlight. And of course, the hero living long enough to become the villain in Hulk Hogan. Now the negative. They can't keep having shows like that. That felt like one of the longest wrestling shows I've ever watched. I have to believe they only did it for this week and that they can't keep up the pace of overly long video packages and drawn-out promo segments. The pace was awful. I also don't mind sponsors in the ring, as I did just watch 2 New Japan shows back-to-back, but it does feel a bit rough seeing a sponsor for Saudi Arabia on the mat. I don't think New Japan has that. I'm also not a fan of The Undertaker anymore. If someone is going to ride on a motorcycle, I'd prefer it to be the Shooter Scooter.
Oh, maybe they can switch vehicles. The two of those. Muggan writes, the Netflix era is off on the right foot. There was a lot of stuff. There was a lot to like about this, as 2 feuds have been wrapped up. Cena's looking to chase number 17. The MasterCard logo looking SOB got booed out of the building. Roman feels whole again, and the Punk Rollins match came through and delivered. I loved how the in-between stuff got aired over here. It feels more fleshed out. I wonder if it'll be the case for SmackDown and NXT going forward. Rock being on New Year's Evil tomorrow night tells me that it's going to crack 1 million in viewership.
The MasterCard logo looking SOB is a very unique way of describing Hulk Hogan. I love it. Let's go to Jeremy in Texas. What a debut show tonight on Netflix. The Rock seems to have written himself off by not shooting any angle tonight. Lee Fitting got to show off what he got for Christmas, and the fans wanted nothing to do with Hogan. WWE may need to rethink that next Saturday night's main event if it's supposed to be centered around Hogan, because the reception was icy cold. He may have been the biggest heel in the building. It sure seems like we're not getting the Rock match at Mania. He tied up all his loose ends, and yeah. The first show on Netflix was fantastic. The Intuit Dome was the perfect venue for Lee Fitting to show off his new drone collection. The show we get next week will probably be more of the norm. Yeah.
Next, we go to Nathan, who writes, so it's been a while since I have watched the WWE product. I'm a 90s era guy and got back in at 2015 and slowly backed off a few years ago once AEW took off. He goes on to talk about that the presentation for the show was a 10 out of 10. They did it up perfectly. However, I felt like I was watching a UFC or boxing pay-per-view. Interesting that several people have had that same note. 4 to 5 matches in 3 hours. More focus on the celebrities and executives from Netflix than the actual wrestling. This felt more like a product than a wrestling show. I'm very curious to watch next week to see how they change the format and pacing. He goes on to say, just curious if any comments before about the ticket pricing on Elimination Chamber in Toronto felt insane this year, especially including Ticketmaster's stupid fees. We thought about going this year, but the prices out of the gate seemed steep as hell. I mean, the prices, it's certainly not just specific to the Toronto market. This is across the board, as 17,000 at the Intuit Dome can probably back me up. This is just where they feel the demand is at. And you can look at the number. They've got about 24,000 tickets out for the Elimination Chamber show. And I would say that that number is lower than I thought it would be for at this period for WWE and for a fairly significant pay-per-view event. They're really marketing this around Cena's last time in Toronto. But what's consistently been brought up to me is it's not so much the interest in the product. It's just people are priced out of these shows and what is being asked of them. And to be quite honest, Wade, like, you imagine what the average ticket price was for the Intuit Dome tonight. Like, tonight's show, tonight was a at-home viewing experience to get the full feel of tonight's show. I'm less inclined to go to a live show, especially when it's a real expensive night out to go to a WWE show, especially if you're taking kids or something like that. That the at-home experience is, like, I think it's a superior one, and I wonder if, like, the pricing, it is going to cut off certain fans. Like, that's a given as they've marked their tickets at such a level.
Right, but if the show and the product is hot, I think it'll still inspire plenty of people to go. Like, it
will. Like, there's people that are replacing these, but it's it is a give and take. Like, there will be big shows, and tonight was an example of one. But there's definitely, like, a portion of the audience that you are going to price out, just as UFC has. That there are just fans that will not be able to afford these shows. And
as long as there are fans that have bigger pockets to replace those ones, I don't think they mind. I think they want to replace those fans.
Yeah, they're not a priority to you. Like, that's just they won't say that, but that is the reality of things. Like, you are a disposable fan at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you very much for the feedback.
Yeah, and I think we should wrap up the feedback there. We have a lot of it. We encourage people to go to forum.postwrestling.com if you want to read more. Thank you guys for a lot of your thoughts, but I guess we have a time limit to get to ourselves.
We do. We don't have the flexibility that Netflix does for WWE, but we also will probably never do a 45-minute show. We try our hardest, but we cannot. So we are going to sign off. Thanks to all of you for staying up late with us to talk about the debut of Raw on Netflix. Again, the final mention, Wednesday, we make all the changes going over. If you enjoy finishing the show and then joining us live, you will have to do so postwrestlingcafe.com. We will be live about 5 minutes after Dynamite goes off the air, and that will be the same for SmackDown and Raw. If you are just consuming our content for free, it will be up late those nights, Monday, Wednesday, and now the addition of a SmackDown review that you will get on Saturday morning. So subscribe to the free feed. You will still get all of our show reviews as well. So if you would like to sign up, postwrestlingcafe.com, and we will make mention that in addition to Rewind to Dynamite, we are back on Thursday with Rewind Away. This week, we are chatting about the 1989 feud between Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. We will review the 3 famous matches from 1989, but we're also throwing in the March 1989 match between Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair that was done at a live event in Landover, Maryland. So we are going to chat about that, which has made its way onto YouTube over the years. So we'll chat about that one as well. So 4 Flair Steamboat matches from 1989, and we'll do a kind of history of that feud and a very interesting and very short run that Ricky Steamboat has in WCW in 1989, which begins really hot, and he has these legendary matches, and he's gone by the summer. So it's a very interesting and short run for Ricky Steamboat. So that's coming up on the Post Wrestling Cafe. We are done. We are out. Goodbye.